How is house fishing, by the way?
Oh, it was sick.
It was sick.
Yeah, Riley Molman and JP, two of the linemen that went with me had like
They're pros.
yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was called, but they had a little machine where they dropped, the little probe in there and it showed where the fish were. So when we walked onto the lake, it was, slush for like the first 10 feet. So someone put a little 2x4 that we had to walk out there, get onto it. And then once we got out, probably, I don't know, 100 yards onto the little bay, JP, like I said, those couple guys had been a lot. So I trusted them, but I also knew in the back of my head, like, if anywhere is going to, break first,
It's
it will
probably-
be, it'll probably be one of them. It won't be me. So
Yeah.
that was, that gave me a little bit of ease, and sitting there for, I think we were there probably about 2 hours ice fishing. So.
Welcome to the ZenGame podcast, where you get inside the minds of your favorite college athletes. We have Billy Edwards Jr. here, and just outside of Madison. We'll call this Madison proper, right? First year here. How's it been? You've been here for a few months now.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been good. Obviously, the last probably month, maybe a little bit longer, has been, a lot warmer than when I first came here at
It's hot.
December and January. Yeah, but it's been good. It's honestly gone by very fast. About to finish up the first summer session, and then really, when we come back from our July break, it's everyone kind of knows the engine gets turned up a little bit, knowing that camp's right around the corner. And, when you start summer camp, the season is, I think 30 days away or whatever. So it's been good. It's gone quick, but just obviously I think the progress is, has been the best part for me from thinking January 4th or 5th, our first day, our first meeting as a team and an offense to, kind of where we are now with really having a whole system installed and still making a lot of tweaks and a lot of, consistent kind of changes and stuff to get ready for the fall. But it's been fun so far. Definitely have, everything I kind of thought about it coming in here, whether it was my own thoughts or kind of, some things that have been told to me by other people. It's really exceeded my expectations of here.
So we'll get more about more talking about Wisconsin later, but we're gonna start from the beginning. So I believe 6 years old, you started as a ball boy, right? So is that your first football experience? You have two older brothers. You're the ball boy. Dad's the coach. Is that how that started?
Yeah. I have my oldest sibling is a brother, and then 1.5 years younger than her is my sister.
Okay.
And they, I've always was with them, always was, being babysat by them on the sidelines of my dad's practice and games and whatnot. And I think, I'd like to, claim that I was a ball boy when I was 5 or 6. I was really probably just running around nagging my brother.
You were holding a ball, not necessarily the game ball.
Correct. But yeah, pretty much, my earliest memories were out at the practice field, starting at 5, 6 in the morning to, the Friday nights when we'd be running around there at like 11 p.m. It's really, been all unknown. So it's, it obviously goes back to a deep root of mine, and, it's obviously led me to where I am now. So yeah, those are some of my earliest memories is being the ball boy for the Annandale Adams back in Springfield, Virginia.
There you go. Was that the Adams, like a nuclear atom?
Yeah. That's where my dad went to high school. It's where my mom taught. It's where my parents met. So my dad coached there and my mom worked there. My mom taught there from before I was born to probably when I was like 8 or 9. So like 2010-ish. They both worked there. So they were there for probably over like 30 years. And then, they kind of moved around, but that was my whole childhood was growing up rooting for the Adams. They're actually like the neighboring high school to Lake Braddock where I went. So it was always, it was unique when I was, in late elementary school, the boundaries changed. And so I wasn't really, boundary to go to Annandale anymore. I was going to Lake Braddock. So it was definitely a unique shift, but, I grew up loving red and, being around football and stuff. So yeah, there's good memories, we're talking about right now with the Adams.
It reminds me of like the Springfield Isotopes. It's like the same logo and everything.
Yep. Oh yeah.
So quarterback is not always the plan, right? You just want to play football and turns out you're good at quarterback, but you sort of played all over the place growing up, right?
Yeah. I played football. I think my first year was when I was like 6 or 7. Played quarterback like my first 2 years. And then probably from when I was like 9 to I think 13 or 14, I was all over the place. Played majority like running back and receiver, someone that carried the football. But there was a year in there I played right guard. I always played middle linebacker. That was like the one, consistency throughout my, youth football days growing up was I always played middle linebacker. And then once I got to, I think 7th grade, I was given the option to play quarterback, decided to stick with receiver. And then 8th grade, started to go back to quarterback. And then it's been quarterback only ever since.
Hypothetically, the whole linebackers room, all of a sudden their gear doesn't get shipped to an away game. They need a linebacker. Could you do it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sure Coach Mitch and Coach Tress would love to see me out there. But my dad coached linebackers, for my whole life. And obviously probably before I was born. So I think I'm definitely,
It's in the blood.
yeah, definitely prepared to, blast a little bit out there. Give them some time.
Well, and that's so as a quarterback too, like obviously, they want you to protect yourself or whatever, but like part of you's got to go, I can just run through them.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. You gotta be the hammer, not the nail. You got to bring the physicality sometimes from them. And then obviously, quarterback, you don't take as many hits, so sometimes, it's smarter to run out of bounds. That's still something, I'm trying to make sure,
Like, is it hard to make yourself do that?
yeah, it's at times, especially when you make like the first guy miss, or you get to like the first five, first level of the D line, and maybe even the second level of linebackers, and then it's like, okay, is there a heat seeking missile, and Austin Brown running down tackling you, or my old roommate Dante Trader, who got drafted, like, are they coming to tackle me, or is it a guy I think I can, I want a one-on-one in space for? That's the name of the game. But that's definitely something, as I've gotten older, I try to, be at least a little bit aware of like, okay, who are the guys that are going to try to hit me low that I got to go down, go out of bounds, or, who am I willing to
Size them up a little bit.
correct?
Yeah.
And
Unique situation for you. You talked about your dad coaching linebackers. Your dad was the defensive coordinator at your high school, right?
yeah.
You're the quarterback. So every single day, it's sort of like,
Oh yeah.
so how were those battles?
They were good. They were good. And very rarely did both of us come home happy. But I think for him, obviously I was younger. I'm, in my teenage years, I'm competitive. But I think, if I was doing well, it was a bad thing for him to an extent of, I got to get my players correct and get the defense squared away. But he always, although he never coached me directly, he was always, a coach I had, and, someone that was in the back of my head, back of my ear, kind of giving me pointers and whatnot. He obviously, has been coaching for much, much longer than I've been alive, and has, been around a lot of good football players and, some good quarterbacks through his time. So he was always, giving me pointers, whether he was actively calling the defense against me or he was just standing back behind me watching, practice go on. So that was a fun, unique experience. But yeah, I definitely like to, you know, milk it out and enjoy my days when the offense, had the upper hand against him. So my mom knew when he was coming home who was, who had the tougher.
It was a bad situation for mom because somebody's being mad every time and
Yeah.
she's stuck in the middle. And for him, it was the second round of it too, right? Your older brother Kyle also played quarterback. So what did you learn by just watching him being the younger brother? And then how did it help you sort of navigate your way through what was your high school career and now college?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was when my brother was like seventh or eighth grade. He broke his like growth plate in his throwing shoulder. So like obviously from the jump, that was something he had to overcome. And I think the biggest thing for me, like just watching him was, just how to carry yourself, like being around him. I've got a picture on my phone of when I'm probably in like fifth or sixth grade. And I think he maybe was a sophomore or junior, but he's getting ready to play a game. And just being around that, like the exposure he was able to get from me, I think how I navigated, the recruitment world in high school and to get me into college, like even, both times I entered the portal, like I think he played a big role in that and, kind of being the trailblazer for me. And, I was able to learn from his mistakes and he was obviously able to, he was the oldest kid. So, maybe my parents didn't know of like, hey, start going to camps when you're 14 or 15. But like by the time I got to be 14 or 15, we had known that from my brother and, his experiences getting recruited. So it was, he's had his hands all over my, football career, starting from obviously when I was in youth ball to now, getting the opportunity that we had at Maryland to be together. So it was really special. And like I said, I'm, very grateful for some of the experiences he's been able to have, good or bad, that, obviously helped me get to where I am right now.
I have an older brother too, so I always viewed him as like the battering ram. Like if he was get
Oh
all
yeah.
crazy, I just kind of then you follow behind and figure
Yeah.
out where the mistakes may be. And he's coaching now at Richmond, correct?
Correct.
So we'll get to this later. But when you went in the portal, was there any sort of like, hey, I know this is not your level, but like,
No, I don't think there was that. I think he
no,
was I think, I was able to go to him, go to my dad and, have those conversations about like what, this is who I'm hearing from. What do we think? What do you guys think? Here's where my head's at. But no, I don't think it was ever, I ended up getting the opportunity to come close to home and obviously be, on the same football team as him. The first time I entered the portal, I think we were both, I think we both knew we needed to, go our separate
go,
ways
yeah,
for
little.
my last year.
Well, and also too, him being the older brother. But did you compare your stats to his and make sure that they one extra yard or one more touchdown?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think in high school he's definitely had me beat. Maybe on one of the years, but obviously COVID, my senior year got cut short.
No, that's not fair.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we definitely compared highlight tapes on Huddle
this
100%.
is better.
Um, I think it depends how you look at it. I think maybe career, I got him. I think he was a little bit better of a runner than me. When I was in high school, I don't think I could run very well. But like you turn on my sophomore year tape, I'm throwing the pigskin all over the yard. So I think I may have him beat on that. So
He's gonna blame his broken growth rate.
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
and then is his name a family name also?
So yeah, his name's from my grandfather.
Got it.
Both his first and middle name are from the grandpas on both sides, and then obviously, I think that people always ask me that question of why didn't he get the name after my dad?
He didn't throw enough touchdowns, so they
Yeah,
reverted back. Yeah.
something like that. My dad must have known, but yeah, they took care of both the grandpas first, both my mom and dad's dad, and then, when I was around, I think it just stuck. I think a lot of people, definitely on my dad's side of the family and older relatives definitely say we share a lot of similarities. So, I've
Fair.
taken the name and ran with it. So.
So the start of your college journey. So your first time, I assume COVID sort of messed up the recruiting process for you a little bit. You started at Wake Forest, wasn't the right fit, go to Maryland. So what was that first sort of year of college football like? What was the biggest eye-opening thing? And then how did you eventually make the decision, like, this is probably not where I want to be long term?
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely unique. Like I don't know if it, I think there were some offers maybe I got during COVID that I maybe wouldn't have gotten or wouldn't have gotten that quick. Once everything got shut down, and then I think there was obviously some that I probably missed out on with not able to have like a true senior season in the fall and still go to camps in that last summer. But I committed to Old Dominion in June or July going into my senior year. I was committed to them for 6 months, and then like a week before signing day, I got offered by Old Dominion a little bit earlier, or got offered by Wake Forest a little bit earlier. Ended up flipping, go there. So originally when I went to Wake Forest, it was as a gray shirt. So I was going to get held back, until January of 2022 and go. And then they called me probably like, 45 days. I think I remember I had a counter like 45 days before June 11th when we enrolled, said, "Hey, we want you to come now." So that whole first, definitely like the first month was, it was a little bit surreal of like, mentally I'd prepared, okay, I'm going to go maybe to a military academy or a prep school, something for 6 more months. But now I'm here, I'm on campus. I'm a part of a very, deep quarterback room. They had a lot of, obviously Sam had been there, started 3 or 4 years. I think that was his fourth season, my 1 year there. And then they had two, pretty solid backups behind them that, maybe not have played as much, but it was a deep room. So definitely just, that I say I, would break it up into two parts of like that first, obviously semester going into the season. It was difficult not traveling. And, obviously, anyone in high school, you're usually a pretty good player. You go to college, you have expectations about yourself. And I think it was probably, I remember my dad telling me, I wasn't traveling, wasn't dressing and stuff. So probably after like the second game of the year, I remember like a switch just kind of flipped to me of like, I wasn't really the disappointment of not doing all that things, as a young player went out the window. And then, every Monday was our off day. And every Monday, from there on out in the season, stayed after some practices, would go and throw and just try to get, rhythm with some receivers in my grade, some older guys that could, give me pointers and whatnot. And then the second part of that, 1 year at Wake Forest was the spring where I think I just, took off. I got a lot more confident in the offense, had a great spring ball. And then still just, with how the room was and, the COVID year, there were guys that had been there, almost 2 years longer than me that had the same
When I was 5 years old.
yeah, it was, I was like, this is kind of an uphill battle. It's going to be tough. So then I decided to enter the portal that first time, in May of 2022, I believe. And then, just really looked for an opportunity. It didn't really matter what the level was. Obviously, I went to Wake Forest out of high school because I wanted to play at the Power Five level, compete against the best. So that was obviously still in the back of my head, but I think it was more about, just about an opportunity that first time around of like, where can I go that, they have a competition for the starting job, or even, the opportunity I ended up getting at Maryland was to compete for the backup. And, like I quickly, learned my first year in Maryland is if you're the backup, you're one play away.
Yeah.
And, I obviously, came in some games late, started some games. So that was really all I was looking for, was just an opportunity. And it was tough because I really felt like, I just found my footing at Wake Forest. I'd, started to earn some respect, and, I had a good spring, and I was confident about the offense and kind of what, knew what I needed to work on to continue to elevate my game. And then, you sit there and you have the exit meetings and you talk about it with your dad, and it's like, I don't know. Like I said, there's
You're just stuck.
guys there that were 18 months there longer than me, maybe 2 years, where we were sitting in the same boat. So I kind of knew it was an uphill battle there. So, decided to utilize it, and then had a few good opportunities, and then ultimately landed on Maryland just for a number of reasons. I think one, the familiarity I had with all those guys, and it was close to home. My brother was there. my brother, the system I ran in Maryland, my brother ran, when he played college at Alabama. So it was, a lot of the stars were aligning for me to make that move. Once I got in the portal, and then, like it all worked out. I'm here today where I am because of it. But yeah, it was definitely a unique year. And, I think just the mindset shift I kind of took on in that um first semester when I wasn't, playing and stuff. I think a lot of the work I put in with, a couple of buddies of mine that, it all came to fruition for me in the spring.
Well, and also too, you mentioned Alabama connection. The starter when you were there for a year, I believe, was Tua's little brother. So that's also an Alabama connection. So basically, almost had it was almost like Alabama Northeast,
Yeah.
a little bit.
100%.
And so then you really get sort of the breakout game. I would guess would be the Music City Bowl in 2023 when you're the guy. You play. You were MVP of that game, I think.
Yeah.
So how good did that feel? First of all, like it was your first time really getting to like prove yourself. And
Yeah.
so,
No, that was definitely, I think, for me, to be honest, I think 2022, my first year there, I came in, I played late against Michigan. I came in and, we were down against Indiana in the fourth quarter. We come back and win. I started against Northwestern. I felt like my first year there, I had, as much success, as I was able to have as a backup quarterback, and whatever opportunities I got. And then going into 2023, didn't play as much like I did in 2022. It was more as a runner and, short yardage, quarterback sneak. And, there wasn't as much mop-up time as there was in 2022, or even, crunch time moments where I got. So really, going to that Music Bowl was tough just because I felt, like I hadn't done anything all season. And, I was really just trying to get back to the confidence I had in myself in 2022 as a redshirt freshman that had played, against Big Ten opponents and had done, fairly well. So that was obviously those weeks leading up to it was just big about getting my confidence back. I didn't feel, as confident as maybe I had before. So that was definitely a great moment after that. I won the MVP, we won, there was a bunch of, older guys on that team that I was, very close with. So it was great to send them out the right way. I think all honesty, like the game went the way it did. I don't think I played like amazing, but I think that was like the start of, okay, we're going to the next year. We're bringing in a transfer quarterback. We got a kid here I'm already competing with. Like that was, the start of the 2024, season for me in terms of, you know, getting better and preparing how I have to go in and compete for the job. So that was definitely a fun, unique experience. Obviously, Nashville's a great city, and my whole family was able to be there. It was the last game. Me and my brother were able to share the sideline as, kind of player coach. So that was definitely a fun memory, one that I don't shy to look back upon and enjoy it.
one also too, like so people always think about bowl sit outs, like portals, like the roster's depleted. However, the flip side of that are the guys that are still there who it's like that's their time to shine. So what is it like preparing for bowl game? It is weird because it's almost not the same team, right?
Absolutely.
It's almost like and it's not gonna be the same team as the next year. So it's like a makeshift, like sort of
Oh,
like,
yeah.
so is that a weird thing that's to like go through and then you got to lead the team too?
Yeah, no, I think it was unique. And I think, I'll give credit to Maryland. Like, I think we did a really good job in terms of how we prepared for bowl games, with having, some player run practices. And then, we had whatever the number was we were able to have 15, 20 practices, whatever it was. Like, I think we did a really good job of maximizing those to where, yeah, we look at that and we have our starting quarterback out. We have, I think maybe like a starting receiver. We have a DB. We had guys opt out, and it was kind of like, like you said, there were younger guys like myself and a handful of other players that were like, okay, this is our time to shine. Like, we've played scout team all year. We haven't played a whole lot, and like this is what we get. This is our opportunity to go out there and for us, and kind of how we talked about it there was the kickstart to the next year. So that was a fun time. Where even, I had older guys in my ear, going into that, knowing that I was going to start. And I hadn't really played much that year of like, hey, we got nothing to lose. Like, yeah, probably not a lot of people expect us to be able to compete in this game and have a chance to win. But like, we all believe in you. We know you have the confidence in us and in this system and what, the game plan we're about to cook up. So like, just go out there and, cut it loose. So it was a unique experience. But I think that was, the way we approached those bowl games was definitely beneficial to me in terms of a guy that hadn't played a whole lot, along with a handful of others that played in that game. There was, we had Perry Fisher, Preston Howard, both younger guys that stepped up. But the preparation we did to give me the confidence, allowed me to go out there and play pretty free for the most part.
Yeah, and you're right. In springboard to your first year as a starter last year, you picked number 9. And did you wear 9 before that, or was that the first time? But now it's like your Instagram handle. So now it's like your identity. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
when did it go from just being a number to being like feel like you, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think after 2022, I think just like I said, being a backup quarterback, it was definitely a unique experience in terms of like, I was one play away from playing every game, and I obviously figured that out a lot. And then just the opportunities I had my first year at Maryland, really, first time playing in college. Um, Once I was able to have some success, I was like, I'm gonna ride with nine and kind of make it turn into my own thing. So I decided, to stick with it from there on out. So I'd say, sometime at the point in 2022, maybe after the Indiana game, or I got my first career start against Northwestern, I was like, yeah, this is, I grew up kind of watching Brett Favre. I like 12 because my brother wore it, and Aaron Rodgers. But then, I was able to have some fun in nine. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna stick with it and kind of make it mine. And I've been wearing it for this will be my fourth season wearing it.
And it was just luckily open, or was it part of the recruiting pitch? Like, hey, bye, I got your
It
number.
was it was open. It was between 9 and 17. I think I was originally nine, and then I went to 17 because there was a
Here, you were 17 here for a little
no.
bit?
This
Oh,
was
okay.
at Maryland when I was 18 at Wake Forest.
Okay.
Didn't pick that one.
How's this? Those are only under 20 numbers you
Oh
come.
yeah, 100%. I kind of liked 18, for the sheriff. So
Yeah.
I came to Maryland. My buddy CJ Dupree had 18. He was a tight end, so I was like, okay, that's out the picture. So it was 17 or nine. I believe I was nine at first. Then 17, they moved me to 17 because I think like maybe a transfer receiver or some, older 1 year guy wanted number nine.
Right.
So I was like, okay, that's fine. I go to 17. We end up not getting that transfer. So then I went back in and asked. I was like, hey, can I go back to nine? And then I had nine ever since. So I just kind of stuck with it and made it my own thing.
It's a cool number. I think single digit numbers are like a hot commodity. I think quarterbacks deserve to wear them. I think it's weird when like a defensive end wears
Oh,
not.
yeah.
Um, so you're here now, obviously. I think Virginia was in the running, here was in the running, and then you end up landing on Wisconsin. So your second time in the pool. Actually, let me go back first. So you do your senior day at Maryland, correct? You walked for senior day. So was part of that decision like this is probably my last time, or was that not even crossing your mind?
Yeah, truthfully, that wasn't even in my head. I think it wasn't until after that game, when I already had my thumb injury, and then I got a little bit more banged up in that game to where I knew I wasn't going to play in the Penn State game the last week. I really didn't give any thought about leaving Maryland until, maybe the day after Penn State. Like really, when the season was over, I knew, I was hurt. I wasn't playing. We went through that week, tried to play the Penn State game, didn't. And then really, probably that Sunday, I think that was Thanksgiving weekend was, when I had the first conversation about it. I think the decision for me to walk, I had multiple conversations with like, my head coach at Maryland and my position coach. People where, Ty Felton, I known since I was 14, he was walking. Dante Trader was my roommate. For that year, for that season, I wanted to walk with him. Ruben Hippolyte, like some of my closest friends were all walking. And I figured, obviously they say you can only do it once. So if I can't walk if I'm there for my fifth year, kind of well, because these are the guys that I wanted to walk with the Dante Traders, the Ty Feltons, the Roman Hembys, guys like that, I felt that I had the closest relationships with that, we had gone through the up and downs of the season, the good, the bad, everything in between that those were, my guys through it all. And that was, the pictures and the festivities of that day that you're able to have with, those guys and those families, like that's the stuff I'll remember, 30 years down the line. So that was ultimately the weighing factors that went in on, being able to walk for senior day. And, it just so happened that that was my last game playing there too. So
Well, and so then after, so you get another one here too, so that's pretty cool. You get
yeah.
two actually, but so the transfer portal process obviously is a very expedited recruiting
Yeah.
process. But now you're going for the second time. But first time you're sort of an unknown. Now you have stats, you have film, you're a known commodity. So was it a different experience the second time than the first time? And I assume there were more phone calls, just given that you had started for a year and people sort of knew what to expect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just kind of how you said it, I think the first time it was really I was fielding anything I got, trying to, figure out just, didn't matter the level if it was Power Four, if it was FCS, FBS, whatever it was, like what was the best opportunity. And that was similar for the second time, but obviously it was more, there was very quickly in the first 36 hours of me entering the portal, like I had to, do my homework and sit down with my brother, my dad, and, the people in my party and be like, yes, no, yes, no. Like, who am I? If they reach out, or maybe it was already schools that had reached out, I'm going to talk to them because I'm interested for XYZ, or I just don't think that's a good fit. Let's not waste our time. Because, like you said, I entered the portal probably close to a week later than it opened. And obviously at quarterback, schools are taking one guy plays, so it moves very fast. So that was just, my thought process of trying to do that homework as quick as possible so that when it did, and, I think I was in the portal maybe not even a full 5 days. Like it was much, much more hectic than I anticipated. So
You talking about the homework. Did you start doing it like you're going to the portal? Did you start looking at potential landing spots, and then once you're in, then you get contacted, or were you just basically like, I'll start looking once someone's interested in me, then I'll start doing the research? Or was it
yeah,
sort
you
of
start the nice thing, and that was kind of what, gave me some sort of blueprint is like I think probably a handful of quarterbacks. I could remember some of the names, but a handful of quarterbacks that entered the portal before me. And, seeing where they're getting interest from, seeing where they're visiting, you kind of figure out who's looking for one, who needs
right?
one. And then obviously, like for example, like I remember Miller Moss, where he was visiting and what schools I reach out to him. So like right off the gate, I know, if he's going to reach out to 10 of those schools, I know at least 6 or 7 of them are going to be reaching out to me. And then,
Right.
you kind of play that game. And there was a handful of other quarterbacks that had gotten in the portal before me to where, I'd spent the 2-ish weeks from after that Penn State game to when I ended up entering the portal, like figuring it all out because it wasn't an easy decision, and I had to have a lot of conversations, with many different people and kind of figure out what I thought was really best. And then ultimately, when I did figure out, okay, I think this is where it's leaning, and the 36 hours later, I ended up doing it. Like in that 36 hours, it's like, okay, who am I expecting to reach out? Where does someone need one? Where would oh, the school needs ones. No, I don't want to go to the West Coast. So like I'm not looking at that. Whatever it was, kind of just doing a little homework like that to speed up the process. Because obviously the goal of mine was to visit as many schools that I was interested in or had interest as quick as possible. But with how late I entered and the portal process for a quarterback, like you don't always get. You don't have always that time
Right.
to go hop around and visit all these schools. So
And the coaches, I think, are probably panicked too. Like, we need a quarterback. Like, maybe this is our second choice, but it doesn't matter. Like, we got to sign him, and then
yeah,
once that happens, and the doors close for them. So like, it is weird. It's like it's almost like a hectic game of musical chairs.
yep.
Do you also talk to other? I know this is sort of weird because it's like I don't want to say competition, but it is like, do you and other quarterbacks connect that are in the portal? Like, hey, this is what I'm leaning towards this, so maybe you don't want to take that trip, or like, does
Yeah.
those conversations happen?
No, I wouldn't say directly between us. I know, people in my corner were able to give some insight on other quarterbacks. Like I said, the ones that had got in before me to kind of give me, some lay of the land. I think the nice thing about going in the second time, or was something different than the first time, is like, able to reach out to some of the other kind of bigger names in the portal, like tight ends and linemen and receivers, and a kid had texted me like, "Hey, you're going to visit Michigan," and I was like, "Yeah." And then the moment I was like, "I don't want to visit Michigan anymore for whatever reason," I shot him a text just because we had that communication of, it was essentially when with everyone that's in the portal, it's free agency. So yeah, obviously you want to connect, with other guys that you have the ability to. I don't know if it happened with quarterbacks, but I definitely was able to receive some information on my end of just seeing kind of how some of the other quarterbacks in the portal were panning out, and then that kind of gave me a little bit of a better idea for when I got in of like, hey, here's what is in store for me when I get in there.
So that you pick Wisconsin, and being the presumed starter at quarterbacks, you're also got to be the leader, but you're new. So I believe one of the first things you guys did, you took the O line, or you're with the O line ice fishing. Like, what sort of things do you think a quarterback in general has to do in order to get to know everybody quick and let them know you're serious and let them know who you are? Like, what are some of the steps you had to take?
Yeah, I think for me, like the biggest thing that I told myself was just to be, genuine, be authentic, be myself. I think with maybe some of it's from my upbringing or like, background, just kind of how social I am. Like I've been in, this is my fifth different year of college football, my fifth different locker room, at my third school. So I've been a part of many different locker rooms. So I kind of feel, at every stop, whether I was a young player at Wake Forest that, didn't play and didn't have the accolades to my name of being the starter and being kind of, one of those guys, to Maryland when I kind of earned my respect in that way. I feel like I've always been, been able to create relationships, be friends with the D line, the defensive backs, like the safeties, like every position, not just outside of the offensive side of the ball and the quarterbacks. So that was the biggest thing for me, was just to be genuine, be authentic. Obviously, in the landscape we're in nowadays, I think we had, including mid-year freshmen, maybe like 30 new guys, maybe like
So you were the only one. You have
yeah,
three quarterbacks that are new too.
correct. Yeah, almost the whole quarterback room was new. So that was a unique thing that, kind of was able to work in my advantage of like, hey, we're all here new together. We're all learning this place. Then on top of that, we're putting in a whole new offense. So it's not like it's just, me and a few other guys walking in there, kind of behind the eight ball with learning the offense and stuff. So the biggest thing for me was just to be authentic, be genuine, get to know about these guys, their backgrounds, their families. Obviously, I'm from the East Coast. There's not a whole lot of kids on the East Coast. There's Dylan Jones from Good Counsel, which was close to Maryland. We got a couple guys from Pennsylvania, but everyone else is from around here. And I'm not, coming here in January, I wasn't very familiar with the Midwest and Wisconsin and, all the kind of places around here that, where if you take me to the DMV, yeah, I had to sit here and rattle off everything. So just getting to learn about the guys in terms of, their upbringing and where they're from. And, obviously it was tough of like, I didn't know if this kid had been here 5 years or if he, was walking in the door with me.
Right.
So just getting to know him, I think was the biggest thing. And then the second thing, I've never tried to be like, too much of a talker of outgoing, like always try to, let the work speak for itself. So just getting after it in the weight room and, I remember like, I was thinking about this past week. Like I remember like it was yesterday, it was one of our first position meetings as quarterbacks. We go over the first install. I think the third page of that first install is our cadences. Well, at 7:30 in the morning, we walk down to the offensive line room and we give the cadence. And like, so that right there, was an opportunity for me to present myself and, show my command and all that stuff. And it was little moments like that where I was like, I just got to make sure I keep the main thing, try to get to know these guys, try to, go out to lunch with them, go ice fishing with them, do.
How is ice fishing, by the way?
Oh, it was sick.
It was sick.
Yeah. Riley Molman and JP, two of the linemen that went with me had like,
They're pros.
yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was called, but they had a little machine where they dropped, the little probe in there and it showed where the fish were. So
So wait, I gotta ask you that too, because I saw the picture on your Instagram, like ice brisk. You're around 8 other dudes who weigh 300 pounds. Was there any part of you like, I think, is there like a weight limit here? They're all standing way too close to each other.
that gave me confidence. I mean, if these guys can walk around and sit on stools on this, because when we first, it was maybe a week later, the ice had melted because it was starting to get warmer. So when we walked onto the lake, it was, slush for like the first 10 feet. So someone put a little 2x4 that we had to walk out there, get onto it. And then once we got out, probably, I don't know, 100 yards onto the little bay, JP, like I said, those couple guys had been a lot. So I trusted them, but I also knew in the back of my head, like, if anywhere is going to, break first, it will be, it'll probably be one of them. It won't be me. So
Yeah.
that was, that gave me a little bit of ease, and sitting there for, I think we were there probably about 2 hours ice fishing. So
This year also, from what I've been hearing, kind of going back to more the old school Wisconsin, like taking snaps under center. Is that new for you? I know it sounds crazy, but
yes and no. I think I did it a little throughout college. Not a whole lot. I think the extent of how much we're going under center is probably new for me. But that was, truthfully, that was probably the biggest factor in me coming here was the opportunity to go under center and to run, the system that Coach Grimes has brought. Because I know, what is going to be asked of me in a system will set me, much, much better, in a position I feel that will help me with whatever opportunity I get at the next level. Like I'll be much more prepared for. So it's been new and, it's been something like you said, the cadences, the drops, like practicing all that in my apartment, before I even get there to make sure, I feel good and confident on it. Like all that's been, a fun challenge for me to learn all that stuff. And like I said, I know obviously the end game of playing college football is to get to the next level. I know, everything they're asking me to do in this offense, will
sure.
set me up for better success.
I think a lot of that sort of gets lost. People like to see, Mike Leach type stats, like 5,000 yards, whatever. But then it's always like a knock still. It's like, oh, well, it's just because he's never been under center. It was going to take him too long to learn, blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel like more mature players like you look at that factor. Was that something that you think that even freshmen even consider? Or is it like, how much does that factor in? I know for you, obviously, this year is probably huge because this is your show-off, your showcase year, right?
Yep.
So, do other players talk about that when they're talking about places to go play?
I don't know. I feel like just the nature of it. I think one, it depends what conference they're in. I think if they're in the ACC, probably not as much. Just with the nature of kind of what their football entails. But I think definitely, I mean, me as a younger player, I probably wasn't thinking about it as urgently. I know where I was now with my position of having 1 year left. I was like, this is something I really want to do. I got to do it. I know it's going to be a challenge. I know it's going to be maybe not new but different. But it's going to, I know if I can, with my work ethic and kind of how I approach new things, I know, that it will set me up for, a better chance at the next level. I don't know if younger me would have talked about that. I think, like you said, yeah, it is, definitely easier to get caught up in the passing yards and the passing touchdowns and stuff like that. But I think ultimately it was, through definitely my 1 full year of starting, like, you kind of realize, what it takes to be successful. And I wanted to be in a system where I felt like we could run the ball and, be multiple and everything that we do, whether it's under center or in the gun. And that's, that was, like I said, one of the biggest reasons why I picked Wisconsin and, to work with a guy like Coach Grimes and to be in that offense for a year. I think, I'm ecstatic to be able to do it on Saturdays when it's live and, see how a defense reacts to kind of what we're doing.
I mean, you definitely seem like the type of guy who hates wearing like you guys wear green shirts, I think, or
Oh, we wear black.
black. Yeah, you
Yeah.
probably would rather have a red or white one.
Yeah, yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
just saying, especially with some of the trash talk the defense because they don't like you guys.
so goals for next year, for this year. I don't know. Obviously for the team win every game, but not, that's obvious. But for you personally, are there certain things that you are looking forward to showing off that you've improved in the off season? Like, what aspects of your game are you proud of that you've been able to improve since last year?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me has just been consistency. I think obviously, I had the thumb injury at the end of the year and, didn't play as good as maybe I did in the beginning. So I think just the goal for me, this year and the stuff that I've been working on has just been consistently, from week 1 to week 18, whenever the season's over, like, um, I there's no like, hey, I got to throw for 2,000 yards or hey, I got to throw this many touchdowns. It's going to be about, creating explosive plays and being efficient. And with efficiency, it comes, high completion percentage and hitting shots when they're there and not turning the ball over. That's really, if I can see an improvement for me in, those statistical categories from last year and from, the first 3 years of me playing college football, like that's my goal is to be consistent. And, when there's plays for me to make with with my feet or throw the long ball, like hit them. But obviously, very rarely do you see guys, quarterbacks in the NFL, unless they are a, once in a generation talent like Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray, guys that run a lot. Like I want to do what the offense is asking me, and I want to make the plays, when they're there for me to make. And it's going to be a team effort, offensively that we're going to do. So just do my job and hit the shots when, they present itself.
So last question. So I'm assuming when you watch film, do you grade yourself or you have some sort of, so I'm assuming your dad also has a similar, and your brother.
Oh, yeah.
Of the three of you, who's the harshest grader of you? Is it you? Is it your dad? Is it your brother? Who's the most critical, you think?
I'd say we all in our own areas. I think me and my dad are probably the hardest. I think my brother's the hardest, but I think, my brother has a unique perspective of having played the position. And then obviously where I was last year, he had been there before. He knew, what was asked and what all that environment entailed. So he was obviously able to sit there and watch the tape with me and be like, yeah, there probably wasn't much you could do there. Or, hey, he was not afraid to get in me and coach me and, make sure I kind of knew, what the coaching point was for that play. But definitely me and my dad. I think obviously I'm the hardest on myself.
Have you ever given yourself an A?
No,
No. Anything above a C?
no, yeah, definitely. At times, I think the mindset that my dad kind of instilled for me from a young age of like the Tom Brady chase for perfection. Like that's always in the back of my head of, yeah, there's games where I feel like I played really really well, but like I'm never perfect, and I don't think any of us will ever be. I don't think any definitely quarterback has ever played the perfect game, but I think that's that's what motivates us is the chase to perfection and kind of what's as you get older. And as I found out, especially definitely in the last 2 years of my college career, is like the older you get is the corrections and the, chance and opportunity to grow is in the details, is in the smaller things. So, just focus on those details as I get older and I get more comfortable and I play more, more and more football at the collegiate level. Like that's kind of just what I've, been able to try to get that little extra edge and, that maybe that few percent that could get me to like a B plus or
That's pretty good.
whatever it was.
When I took all the people, that was good for me.
Yeah.
A 3-3 guy.
Absolutely.
Billy, thank you so much. Good luck this season.
Appreciate you guys.
Yep.